Jessica's going to introduce our first presenting company.
Yes, hi. We have John Ripplinger, VP of Corporate Affairs from Imaflex. Imaflex has an extensive offering of ag films that are currently being used throughout North America with multiple choices for crop protection. They're currently profitable and growing and developing a very exciting crop protection film called Advacil. This could be a game changer for ag film and a huge growth engine for Imaflex. John, I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Jessica, for the introduction there, and thank you to everybody that's dialed in today to hear a little bit more about Imaflex. What I'd like to do over the next few minutes then is give you a good overview of our core flexible packaging business, and then we're going to jump into the agricultural side. Right now, it constitutes about 7% of the business, but we have a product that we're working on, an agricultural film. It's a crop protection film that releases active ingredients into the soil, chemicals, and replaces the need for chemical fumigation. And that could be really a game changer, not only for the industry, but for the company as well, and obviously good for the environment. We'll be talking about that more just in a few minutes. Now, before we begin, let me remind you that today's remarks could contain forward-looking statements, and I invite you to read the safe harbor passage contained in the presentation before you. It will also be on our website, and I believe Adelaide will be posting it in addition on their site following today's event. So what's Imaflex about? Well, Imaflex primarily manufactures and sells products for the flexible packaging and the agricultural space. You can't go into any drugstore, food store, et cetera, without seeing some form of flexible packaging. It's in almost every consumer product out there, and we play a large role in that space, mostly within the food industry, and also we have a full spectrum of agricultural films as well. The company was established back in 1994 by three individuals. Those individuals are still with the company to this day, and they bring in-depth experience in the extrusion business, the making of plastics, as well as in the converting business, which is the printing and bag making side of plastics. We have three manufacturing facilities, two of those being in Quebec and one in Thomasville, North Carolina. Now, the company is profitable. It has a healthy capital structure and is basically a cash generator. We have about $87 million of revenues in 2020. So when you buy Imaflex, you're buying a company with a strong financial profile, a strong core flexible packaging business, and then that blue sky opportunity that comes with the rollout potentially of Advacil, that crop protection film. Now, looking at the company a little bit closer, we primarily, I mentioned to you earlier, manufacture polyethylene film for converters. Converters are like printers. They take our product and they make a finished good for the end customer. It can be bread bags, soil bags, wood chip bags, etc. Now, as I mentioned to you, we primarily focus on the food industry. So that includes frozen foods, pet foods, meats, dairies, fruits, vegetables, etc. Now, we also take the waste that we have in the manufacturing process and we make industrial products. So garbage bags, compostable bags, Gaylord bags. And in addition, at our US operations, we have the fully integrated operation there. So that includes the extrusion, the printing, and the converting, which allows us to offer our customers a one-stop shop, basically a much more value-added product, those higher margins that come with it as well. And that's really been a good revenue driver, profitability driver for us over the past few years. We spent heavily on new equipment in the US, and we're seeing the benefits of that now. Now, the agricultural side, as I mentioned to you, it's a small component of the business right now, about 7% of revenues, but we have the full spectrum of mulch films. We have your traditional mulch films for weed control to reduce soil erosion, stop water evaporation, your barrier films for pre-plant soil fumigation to stop nuisance odors, stop the evaporation. We also have compostable films that are fully compostable. They have been ASTM 6400 certified to break down and decompose as they should. And so we offer that not only on the agricultural side, but we also offer that on the flexible packaging side. We have a full lineup of products there using chemically modified resins to break down and decompose, as well as those types of products using polylactic acid or plant-based sources on top of that. Then in addition, we offer metalized films. Our metalized films are for crop protection and yield enhancement. They act as an insect deterrent. The waves that come off of the film basically disorient the insect as to what is up and down, and they fly over the growth that is below and move on to other areas where you don't have that metallized film. And it also acts as an enhancement in terms of promoting growth and yield because of the solar rays hitting the reflective film and then bouncing back up on the underside of the vegetable, fruit, etc., being grown. When we look at Imaflex, just in terms of how we differentiate ourselves, we're a smaller company. I said we have about $87 million of revenues, but the way we differentiate ourselves is we have really a team of chemists and engineers that allow us to develop innovative, customized solutions for our clientele. We use these people to work on new products with resin providers, with the customers themselves, to come up with new solutions. And we've worked with global brands over the years to develop these types of products. In fact, Advacil was a product that was originally brought up to our attention by a global brand. They were having problems with the film itself disintegrating when the chemicals were being applied, and we were able to help them out with that, and subsequently bought the patent rights to the Advacil product. And the individual that was working on it in Germany came over and is working with us now. In addition, Imaflex differentiates itself in terms of its ability to offer customers quick turnaround times and to take on smaller orders. So our larger competitors would not necessarily be as interested in that type of space, but it's been a good one for us to operate in, and a recipe for success for the business. So really customized solutions, smaller orders, quick turnaround times. We do about 14,000 orders a year and turn things around in order typically within less than 7 days. So that's a fairly quick turnaround for our industry. Now, when you look at Imaflex, the two key markets, as you can imagine, then the flexible packaging space. The flexible packaging space is valued at around $30 billion. It's growing at around 3% annually. It's resilient to economic downturns. As I mentioned to you earlier, we primarily serve the food industry, and you continue to buy during economic downturns, your groceries, etc. So we've actually been recognized over the past few years as well. We're told that we had to remain open because we were considered an essential vendor because of the important role that we play in protecting and preserving food products, etc. And we're also one of the top 100 North American film and sheet manufacturers by sales. And that's, I think, telling you that there's a lot of smaller mom and pop shops out there that are operating. The industry is ripe for consolidation. We've been seeing it over the past few years, and we'll continue to see that going forward. And it's something that we could look at doing in terms of possibly taking on small tuck-in acquisitions if it makes sense going forward in terms of size, fit, and ease of integration. In terms of the mulch films, about a $4 billion market for us, and this is growing at around 5.5%. And here again, we've been recognized as a leader in the space because of the important work we do in such areas as those unique films, such as the metalized film and the product Advacil. And we were recognized this year by New World Ag and received a farming award for having some of the best ag films in North America. So we're pretty happy with that. So we feel with these unique films that we've got going on right now, and also with the macro environment working in our favor, that we're pretty well placed. And when we look at the macro environment right now, growers are facing a number of challenges. You know, you've got the growing world population, rising demand for sustainable products, scarcity of resources, changing climate and pollution, and agricultural yields are going down due to disease, etc. So all that means that growers are turning to other industries such as ours to help them to do more with less, and that's what we're all about with some of our ag films, particularly Advacil. And when you speak of Advacil, then just to take a closer look at it, the way Advacil works is it's an active ingredient release film. So right now, if you look at the way fumigation is done, growers will take a land area that they have and pre-plant. They want to ensure that soil is basically sanitized. So they come along and they'll fumigate the land with pesticides, so nematicides to kill the insects, fungicides to kill the fungi, and herbicides to kill the weeds. That's subject to overdosing, underdosing, requires protective gear. And we feel that a much more friendly, cost-effective approach is necessary. And this is where Advacil jumps in. Now, Advacil, as I mentioned earlier, what we do is we take the chemicals that I just mentioned to you, those pesticides, and we coat them on the film itself. That film is then taken and placed on the ground, and those chemicals are released into the soil in a very safe, timely, and cost-effective manner. Essentially, what happens is the water, the moisture rises from the soil, it hits the film itself, and it activates the release of the chemicals into the soil. It is safe to handle the film, it's safe to transport, and it only requires protective gloves. That's all that you need. It uses 95% less chemicals as well versus the current grower standards. So in a study that we did, we'll be talking about that study shortly, the current grower standard called for 660 pounds of chemicals per acre. That's 660 pounds. We reduced that usage by over 95%. So we're talking less than 35 pounds per acre versus the 660 pounds. So brings tremendous savings to the growers in terms of increasing their productivity, because they no longer have to fumigate. They just put the film on the ground like they're doing today. As well, it decreases their costs because you're using much less chemicals. You have much less labor costs because you're not doing the fumigation, et cetera. And clearly, it's very good for the environment as well because you're using much less chemicals. So given that, what we did over the past year and a half or so is we conducted 2 trials, an efficacy trial and a release study. The efficacy trial was designed to basically look at the Advacil film itself and see if it is sanitizing the soil in the manner which we expect. Is it getting rid of the insects, the fungi, the weeds pre-plant? And also, does it allow the plant that's growing? In this case, we chose a tomato plant because it's one of the most grown plants in the world. Is the plant growing at an equivalent rate as the current grower standard? So is the growth, yield, quality comparable to the current grower standard? And we're very pleased to announce in a number of press releases that 1, the chemicals were releasing from the soil in the manner which we expected. 2, the plant growth, yield, and quality was comparable with the current grower standard. Again, was for the tomato products that used fumigation to get land ready for the planting. Now, we believe that because of this, that Advacil can likely be used for most fruits and vegetables requiring pre-plant soil fumigation. Now, in terms of the coating, I did want to point out to you as well that we work very closely with a company called Fujifilm. They're USA operations on the coating side of the film. Fujifilm is, they're just located up the road from our US facility, and they bring in-depth experience in chemicals, bringing new products to market, and they have expertise on coating, as I said. So really a win-win for all. We concentrated on the extrusion, they concentrated on the coating, and we used them for the coating process for the 2 trials that we did. Now, the second trial that we had was the release study. And the release study was basically, you can have something that works, that's fine, but the EPA, the US Environmental Protection Agency, they want to make sure that the release times are in compliance with what they call the pre-harvest interval. You cannot pick fruits, vegetables, whatever, prior to a certain period of time after chemicals enter the soil. So what we had to show is that chemicals entered the soil and enough time had lapsed between the entry of those chemicals into the soil and when that crop is picked for safe human consumption. All these trials were done by independent parties. And in that second trial, the release study, we did find there as well that the chemicals, were releasing in the manner in which we expected. And so we were in compliance with all of the PHI intervals required by the US EPA. So with this good news, what we're doing now is the chemicals that we have sourced they're sourced from abroad. We didn't want to be committed to one supplier in the USA, so we're using a generic chemical. So what we're doing, or chemicals, I should say, because there's 5 different ones on the film itself. So what we're doing now is we're proving the equivalence of the chemicals on our film with the generics that are already approved in the US. This allows us to expedite the approval process. It just simplifies the registration process for us. So what we're doing right now is working with the independent lab on that, and we expect that to be completed in the coming months. And once that's done, we'll submit the Advacil registration package for the US EPA approval. So I kind of look at it like right now we're sort of like if you say a biotech company, we're in stage 3 clinical trials, and we're entering that final stage where we just have to get that approval from the US EPA to start commercialization. Now, to manage expectations, we always say that can take up to a year to receive the US EPA approval. It could be shorter, it could be a little bit longer, but that's the timeline that we're providing to our shareholders at this point in time. Now, we're pretty confident that Advacil will be approved, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, the trials. They were done by independent parties, and the trials were successful on all fronts in terms of the criteria that we were looking for. And two, we already did have a film. There was a predecessor to the new Advacil. The predecessor only had an herbicide. Originally, when that large cap firm approached us and asked us to help them out, they had the idea of only coating an herbicide on the film. So we took it the full 9 yards. We had it approved by the EPA. And as we were going along and talking with growers, they were saying to us, well, look, it's great to have the herbicide on the film, but we really should have all of the chemicals, so the nematicides, the fungicides, because otherwise they still have to fumigate with the other chemicals. So what we did now is we had the herbicide film approved, and now we're going back to the EPA and saying, look, you approved the herbicide film, we've added these additional ingredients onto the film, and so we're looking for approval for basically a one-stop shop for growers. And at the same time, it reduces that chemical usage by 95+%. And given the focus these days on sustainability, et cetera, eco-friendly type products, I think this is got a fairly good success possibility. Now, when you look at our financials, I mentioned to you earlier, we are profitable. We have a healthy capital structure, and we have basically become a cash generator for the business. 2020 was a transformational year for Imaflex. We grew stronger by almost every measure. Revenues were up, EBITDA was up, net income was up, cash flows were up. So across the spectrum, we saw some very good things. All areas of our business performed very well. One area, the garbage bag division, did not because the business is being closed. But with COVID ending now, with people going back to work, we've seen a very big uptick on that side of the business. So we saw some good things for 2020, and that's carried on to 2021. If you look at the numbers here, we've seen some very good improvement in terms of our sales, in terms of our profitability. And I think the numbers that you see there speak for themselves. And this growth is being driven by a few things. I mentioned to you earlier, we printed some new equipment for our US operations. We have a new printer, we have a new extruder. This allows us to upsell by offering a much more capabilities in terms of the new equipment. It also allows us to upsell in terms of a higher margin products. And in addition, the increased scale removes the impact to some degree of labor and overhead costs. It reduces the impact of those costs. So collectively, we've seen some good things, and we hope to continue to generate good numbers on a go-forward basis with this behind us, these positive tailwinds. We'll be announcing our results next week. I believe it's on the 24th of November. So I invite you to take a look at the results then. Now, in terms of growth going forward, as I mentioned earlier, there's a few things that we can do. One would be growing through organic means, through additional equipment purchases. Two could be through a small tuck-in acquisitions, again, that makes sense in terms of size, fit, ease of integration. And three could be through Advacil itself, which brings crop protection EBITDA margins in the 35% plus range. So some very attractive opportunities there. So it could be one or a combination of different things from that side. When you look at the company, I think we've had now over a year and a half of good solid numbers. The market's starting to take notice. We've seen a double in our stock price, and the volume is still relatively tight in terms of the volume. But we have about 51.6 million shares outstanding, of which 56% of our shares are held by insiders. So fairly good insider ownership, as you can see there. And we also have coverage, by the way, from Beacon Securities. They've stood by us since almost the beginning, so we're very thankful for their ongoing support of the company over the past number of years since they've launched coverage of Imaflex. Now, looking at the next slide, just for a second, I mentioned to you about the founders being with the company. They bring deep industry experience. They are still with the company. They have expertise in extrusion, expertise in converting. They've worked on both sides of the coin in terms of extrusion and converting. One of the founders comes from DuPont, where he had worked for decades. He was a chemical engineer. So we get that expertise. They're not just the people that have expertise in finance or whatever. They have expertise in the business itself. And then we've got the individual that came over from Germany, Ralph Dujardin. He's a chemist, and he brings expertise as well, allowing us to increase our product portfolio. And he's taking a major lead role on the Advacil project, obviously, as well, but also helping us out in terms of new product introductions on the agricultural side to ensure that we're working with the latest eco-friendly type solutions for our clientele. Now, on top of that, we have a finance team that has people that have blue chip experience, and they bring in that financial discipline that you're looking for to ensure that we grow, but not just grow, but grow profitably. So I think it's a nice rounded team that we've got on the Imaflex side from that side. So just to wrap things up, Imaflex is a recognized industry leader in recession-resistant sectors. We serve a growing multi-billion-dollar markets. The macro environment is working in our favor. Sustainability, intelligent farming, as we looked at, is becoming increasingly important, and growers are turning to other industries such as ours to help them to do more with less. We are profitable. We have a healthy capital structure with strong cash flows. We're a cash generator. And on top of that, we've got that core business that is providing us with stability and with the ability to build out our Advacil product and also build up the core flexible packaging business as well. So really, it's a win-win for all, a win for Imaflex, for our customers, for the environment, and for our shareholders. That's it.
Great, thank
Thanks,
you.
John. A very interesting story, that's for sure, with a lot happening. We have a few questions from the audience. I'll just go ahead.
Sure.
Imaflex shares fell steadily for almost 3 years until the end of the first quarter 2020. Since then, they have steadily risen, over doubling in price. Did something specific happen to your business in the first half of 2020, or is it just market sentiment?
No, as I mentioned to you earlier, what we did is we invested during the period before 2020. We were investing heavily in capital equipment. So we purchased a new printer, purchased a new extruder, et cetera. We expanded our product lineup. So those things in combination allowed us to expand our capabilities, expand our capacity, and the expanded revenues, et cetera, and profitability reduces the impact, as I mentioned, of labor and overhead costs on the business. So all that taken together has allowed us to generate much more profitable results and grow the company since that time period.
Yeah, we certainly saw an increase in your EBITDA margins, as stated there.
That's right. 2020 was really a transformational year, and that's carried on into 2021.
Okay, and are you experiencing any production cost pressures at the moment? Are you able to pass on some or all of cost pressures?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So if you look at Imaflex, a big component of our input costs is resin, and resin prices have risen steadily over the past year. In the last quarter, they've basically plateaued. The past few months, they haven't really increased at all, but it has been impactful on the business. And fortunately for Imaflex, given that we're smaller, we have over 400 customers, we don't have long-term contracts with those customers. So what that means is, as resin prices go up, we're able to charge the customers the additional resin input costs. Now, that being said, usually the way it works is this: if resin prices go up, there's a 30-day lag. If resin prices go down, they want to get it right away in terms of the cost savings. So it's over time it works out, but when you're in a constant resin price environment, you do see a little bit of pressure. But again, we do catch up eventually, and it all irons out. But we don't have those long-term contracts, which would have a negative impact on us if we did.
Certainly, and I don't think we're going to see resin prices come down anytime soon.
Yeah, right now they've
Um,
plateaued, and we're hoping that they've steadied. But if you have another hurricane or any type of plant shutdowns, it's going to be an issue. So we've had to work around that, and as well, I mean, the resin market in terms of supply has been sometimes difficult. Fortunately, we've been able to maintain our supply, but you do have to be on top of things to ensure that you've got product to be able to meet the demand of your customers.
Sure.
I have a
Sorry, Deb.
I
No,
just
I
want to
just-
ask, are there alternatives to resin? Is it possible to use another type of product?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I mentioned during the presentation that we're actually working with our customers and working with our suppliers for the resin, we'll call them resin suppliers, with a number of different materials that are compostable, more eco-friendly. We know the market is going this way. We want to be and ensure that we are ready for that. So we work with, for example, BASF. They have a type of product called Imaflex, which is a chemically modified resin that breaks down, is fully compostable. Also, we work with things such as polylactic acid that are plant-based sources that there too allow us to produce more eco-friendly type of products. The demand right now is not as high as some may expect, but we know that market will continue to grow, and we want to make sure that we're ready for it.
That's great. Thank you. We have time for probably one more question. What is the strategy for Advacil? You already have a good customer base with your current films. I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't assume, but that the take up should be pretty quick, I would think, once you release Advacil. And are there any new strategies for marketing that product?
Yeah, and we're as I mentioned to you, it will take about a year before Advacil gets approved, or up to a year. We have a number of different thoughts on that. We could team up with, we're a smaller company, let's face it. We could team up with another company that works in the industry. We could team up with private equity. We could team up with a number of different groups, or we could go it alone. When we look at Advacil, we do want to start out, we do have that customer base. We want to start out in a targeted approach to ensure that we're not just throwing all this money and not ironing out things beforehand. So we'll probably start out with a target approach, and then we'll determine what's next in terms of how we actually go about marketing things. Do we team up with another group? Do we do it alone, or what exactly? That will be coming out in the months over the next year or so. But that thought process is going on right now as we speak.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just a reminder, Imaflex trades on the Venture Exchange under the ticker IFX. And I think we're ready for Deborah.
Well, thank you very much,
Thanks,
everybody.
John.
Thanks to you,
I appreciate
Adelaide.
it.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.